You did everything exactly the way the system told you to do it. You went to a good college, you studied late into the night, you landed a solid job making $100,000 a year, you skipped the expensive vacations, and you rigorously saved 20% of your income until you amassed a war chest of $80,000 in pure cash. But when you confidently walk up to the bank in the year 2026 to buy a painfully average, historically unexceptional $500,000 house, the loan officer looks at your pristine financial record, does the math, and laughs right in your face. The American dream of homeownership has been quietly, ruthlessly replaced by an exclusive VIP club, and despite doing everything right, you are not on the guest list. In this video, we are going to tear down the velvet rope guarding the real estate market, exposing the exact mathematical and psychological reality of who is actually buying these $500,000 starter homes while you are locked out. We will dissect the absolute absurdity of the modern housing market, and most importantly, by the time we reach the end of this journey, you will have a brutal, counterintuitive blueprint to completely bypass the financial bouncers, hack the system, and secure your own keys before the door shuts on the clause. Middle class forever. My name is William, and I specialize in decoding the hidden psychology and behavioral finance traps that keep ordinary people completely broke and endlessly frustrated. If you are ready to stop playing a rigged game, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us dive into the madness. Let us paint a vivid cinematic picture of the current reality. Imagine an ultra-exclusive nightclub shaped like a beautiful modern suburban home. The music is thumping, the lights are glowing warmly from the windows, and inside people are having the time of their lives. But outside, there is a heavy crimson velvet rope. Guarding this rope is a massive, unsmiling 300-pound wall of muscle. This bouncer represents the modern banking system and the draconian interest rates of our current decade. Standing out in the freezing cold, desperately trying to get inside, are our avatars for this story. Let us call them Mark and Sarah. They represent the absolute pinnacle of what used to be the American middle class. Together, they pull in $140,000 a year. A decade ago, this dual income would have made them absolute royalty in the real estate market. They have spent the last 5 years living well below their means, hoarding every spare dollar, watching their high-yield savings account slowly tick up to $90,000. They are financially responsible, logical, and fully prepared. They find a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in a decent but not spectacular neighborhood. The price tag reads exactly $500,000. In the year 2019, this exact same house cost roughly $290,000. But the market does not care about nostalgia, so let us focus purely on the cold hard math of today. Mark and Sarah sit down across the desk from the mortgage broker. The broker, playing the role of the club bouncer, runs the numbers based on a 7% interest rate. Mark and Sarah plan to put down a 10% deposit, which is $50,000. This leaves them with $40,000 safely tucked away for closing costs, moving expenses, and a rainy day emergency fund. Their total loan amount becomes $450,000. When you calculate the principal and interest on a 30-year fixed mortgage at 7%, you arrive at almost $3,000 a month. But you do not just pay principal and interest. You have to add property taxes, which in many states will easily add another $600 a month. Then you add homeowners insurance, which has skyrocketed due to climate factors and corporate greed, adding another $250. Because they did not put down 20%, the bank slaps them with private mortgage insurance, draining another $150 a month from their pockets. Suddenly, their monthly housing payment rockets to precisely $4,000 a month. That is $48,000 a year in purely housing-related expenses. When you factor in federal taxes, state taxes, health insurance, and retirement contributions, Mark and Sarah only take home about $8,000 a month. That means 50% of their absolute take-home pay would be instantly vaporized by this painfully average house. The bank runs their debt-to-income ratio factors in their modest car loan and a tiny bit of lingering student debt, and the bouncer firmly shakes his head. Denied. The application is rejected. Mark and Sarah are completely stunned. They are making 6 figures, they have almost $100,000 in the bank, and they are mathematically categorically locked out of a basic starter home. The bouncer points them back down the street toward the rental market, where corporate landlords are eagerly waiting to bleed them dry. The psychological devastation of this moment is profound, and it forces logical people to make incredibly illogical decisions. Mark and Sarah fall victim to the most dangerous behavioral finance trap of our generation. It is the illusion of the impending crash. Human brains are wired for pattern recognition and fairness. Because the current market feels deeply unfair, Mark and Sarah convince themselves that it is a massive bubble waiting to pop. They anchor their expectations to the great financial crisis of 2008. They tell themselves that any day now prices will violently plummet by 40%, interest rates will magically drop back down to 3%, and they will swoop in like absolute financial geniuses to buy the dip. So they wait. They sign another 12-month lease on their cramped apartment. And while they sit on the sidelines waiting for an economic apocalypse that never arrives, the invisible tax of inflation quietly eats away the purchasing power of their $90,000. Meanwhile, that $500,000 house does not crash. Instead, it appreciates by a modest 4%, pushing its new price tag to $520,000. This is the tragedy of smart people operating in an irrational market. You cannot apply 1990s financial advice to a modern economic reality. You are sitting around focusing on $3 questions like cutting out your morning coffee when you are actively losing the $30,000 battles. You are paralyzed by a psychological phenomenon known as loss aversion, where the fear of buying at the top prevents you from building any equity at all. This brings us to the ultimate question. If a highly educated dual-income couple making $140,000 a year cannot afford an average home, who exactly is inside the club? If you look past the bouncer and peer through the glass into the VIP section, you will see three very distinct groups of people who are casually buying up the entire country. The first group, lounging in the VIP section, is the trust fund dynasty. Picture a guy in a tailored suit wearing a monocle literally swimming in a vault of inherited money. We are currently living through the greatest wealth transfer in human history. The baby boomer generation holds tens of trillions of dollars in real estate and stock market wealth, and that money is actively flowing down to their children. These buyers do not care about a 7% interest rate because they are not getting a mortgage. They are rolling up to the closing table with $500,000 in pure, unadulterated cash. They waive the home inspection, they waive the appraisal contingency, and they drop the money on the table. They are playing the game on easy mode, heavily subsidized by the massive economic tailwinds their parents rode through the 1980s and 90s. When you bid against them, you are not fighting another buyer, you are fighting an entire generational bloodline. The second group, partying inside the club, is the ultra-high-earner tech elite. Think of the software engineer pulling in $350,000 a year while working in sweatpants from a coffee shop, or the remote executive who just cashed in a massive stock option package. To them, a $500,000 mortgage is literal pocket change. Their debt-to-income ratio is virtually non-existent. The banking bouncer unclips the velvet rope the second they walk up because their W-2 income makes them the safest bet in the world. They buy up the starter homes, completely renovate them, and turn them into luxury tech sanctuaries, forever removing that inventory from the middle-class market. The third group is the most insidious and the most terrifying. These are the corporate mega investors. We are talking about the private equity firms, the Wall Street hedge funds, and the billion-dollar institutions who view single-family homes not as places to raise a family, but as dividend-yielding assets on a massive corporate spreadsheet. They borrow money at institutional interest rates that you will never have access to. They do not buy one house, they buy entire suburban neighborhoods at a time. They outbid normal families by paying entirely in cash, and then they immediately turn around and rent those exact same homes back to the exact same families they outbid. They are fundamentally transforming America from a nation of homeowners into a nation of permanent renters. This reality makes people incredibly angry. It feels dystopian. It is deeply, fundamentally unfair. But as a master of your own financial destiny, you have to realize something crucial. Anger is not an investment strategy. Bitterness will not compound in your bank account, and complaining about Wall Street on the internet will not put a permanent roof over your head. If you are not a trust fund baby, a tech millionaire, or a massive private equity firm, you have to stop trying to walk through the front door of the VIP club. You will lose every single time. You must find the side entrance. The rulebook has completely changed, and surviving this decade requires a ruthless, highly unconventional mindset. Let us break down the exact framework you need to hack your way into homeownership. Rule number 1 is accepting the absolute death of the traditional starter home. The concept of buying a pristine white picket fence house with a perfectly manicured lawn as your very first property is a romantic relic of a bygone era. If you want to win today, your entry-level strategy must be hyper-pragmatic and entirely driven by mathematics. This strategy is called house hacking. Instead of looking for a single-family home that constantly drains your bank account, you must actively hunt for a duplex, a triplex, or a property that has a detached accessory dwelling unit in the backyard. Why is this so powerful? Because the rules of banking change when the property generates revenue. When you apply for a loan on a multi-unit property, the underwriter will actually calculate the projected rental income from the other units and add it to your personal income to help you qualify. Let us walk through the math. Suppose you find a decent duplex for $600,000. It is more expensive than the single-family home, which initially sounds terrifying. But the other half of the duplex can be rented out for $2,500 a month. Suddenly, your massive housing payment is subsidized by your tenant. Your personal out-of-pocket cost drops from $4,000 a month down to $1,500 a month. You are no longer just a passive homebuyer. You have evolved into a micro-investor. You have stepped into the shoes of the landlord, absorbing the exact wealth-building mechanics that the wealthy use to dominate the game. You sacrifice privacy for a few years living on the other side of a shared wall to permanently alter your financial trajectory. Rule number 2 is executing aggressive geographic arbitrage. We are heavily anchored by our immediate environment. If you live in a coastal city like Los Angeles, Seattle, or New York, where the median home price is pushing $800,000, your entire perception of reality is horribly distorted. You feel perpetually poor even if you make fantastic money. But we live in an era of unprecedented mobility. The wealthy have always used geographic arbitrage to lower their tax burdens and maximize their purchasing power. You must do the exact same thing with your real estate strategy. There are thriving, economically robust cities in the Midwest, the Sun Belt, and the Appalachian regions, where a budget of $400,000 still buys you an absolute mansion with a massive yard. You must be willing to untether yourself from the coastal illusion. The people who win in 2026 are not the ones who stubbornly wait for their overpriced hometown to magically become affordable again. They are the pioneers who leverage remote work, switch industries, or pack up their moving trucks to go exactly where the math makes sense. If your current city does not respect your capital, you must take your capital to a city that will treat you like royalty. Rule number 3 is mastering the dark arts of unsexy alternative financing. When the front door of traditional bank lending is locked tight, you do not just stand there and cry, you check the windows in the back alleys. Most amateur buyers only know one single way to buy a house, which is walking into a mega bank, bowing down to the loan officer, and begging for a standard 30-year fixed mortgage. But there is a massive, highly lucrative underground market of creative finance. Consider the sheer power of seller financing. This occurs when you find a homeowner who owns their house free and clear. They want to sell, but they do not want to take a massive lump sum payment and hand half of it over to the government in capital gains taxes. So you bypass the banking bouncer entirely. You pay the seller a down payment directly out of your own pocket, and you make your monthly payments directly to them instead of a corporate bank. You negotiate the interest rate, the length of the loan, and the terms face-to-face with another human being, not a rigid banking algorithm. You might secure a 5% interest rate when the banks are charging 8% simply because you solved a tax problem for an older seller. An even more powerful hidden gem is the assumable mortgage. There are literally millions of government-backed loans, specifically Federal Housing Administration and Veterans Affairs loans, that contain a magical clause allowing a new buyer to completely take over the seller's exact mortgage. Imagine hunting through listings and finding a seller who bought their home back in the year 2020 and locked in a 30-year fixed rate of 2.8%. If they have an assumable loan, you can legally step into their shoes and take over that 2.8% interest rate today. Your monthly payment would be literally thousands of dollars cheaper than the person buying the house right next door using modern bank rates. Unlocking these strategies requires intense hunting, uncomfortable negotiations, and an incredible amount of patience, but the payoff is an absolute glitch in the financial matrix. The harsh truth that will anger a lot of people is that the housing market is not actually broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to, under an environment of massive fiat currency inflation and constrained supply. It is a brutal, unforgiving landscape that severely punishes the uneducated and massively rewards the adaptable. The velvet rope is very real. The banking bouncer is very real. The trust fund kids and the corporate behemoths swimming in wealth inside the club are entirely real, but you do not have to be the victim freezing out in the cold. By completely abandoning the outdated financial advice of your parents, embracing the sacrifice of the multifamily hustle, relocating your life to where your money holds supreme power and exploiting alternative financing, you can slip past the barriers and claim your piece of the pie. You must stop waiting for a housing crash to save you, and you must stop waiting for politicians to fix the market, because absolutely nobody is coming to save you. You have to arm yourself with data, change your behavior, and save yourself. I am William, and I want to thank you for walking through this complete financial deconstruction with me. If this video shifted your perspective, gave you the intellectual ammunition to fight back against a rigged system, and provided actual value, hit the subscribe button and leave a like to support the channel. Do not let your financial education end here. Click the video on your screen right now to uncover more ruthless strategies to master your money, beat the institutions at their own game, and build an unstoppable financial fortress for your family. I will see you in the next one.